Welcome to the Miller Report, Real Clear Journalism. I'm Maggie Miller.
I'm joined now by James Taylor, the president of the Heartland Institute. And although you were not a speaker here at the Energy Future Forum, you speak the language of what we're talking here today. So I think it would be great to sit down and speak with you here. You've written on Real Clear before.
I have.
Some of your work looking at the picture of energy. And your work is all about affordable, reliable, clean, ARC, if you will. Would you explain why those three criteria are what you look at with regards to energy and ranking them?
Well, those are the three criteria that are most important if we're talking about our energy mix. First of all, affordability. If we have energy, but it's so expensive that we can't use it or we can't use it efficiently, there's no point in having such energy. So affordability is key. In fact, affordability, that is what determines whether our economy succeeds or fails, because energy is the lifeblood of our economy. The cost of energy is built into every good and service that's bought and sold in the economy. So if energy is affordable, well, then we have an advantage over other nations, and households have more money left available for other things that are important in our lives. So that's affordable. Reliable is very important, because if we can't count on having energy when we need it, if I have a medical device at home and I need to utilize it, but I can't count on the power going on, well, that could be a life-threatening event. But also, all of the necessities and conveniences of modern society, again, if we don't have reliability, then we're just a third world country. So we must be able to have electricity that's available on demand. And then finally, clean. It is important that we be good stewards of the environment. So clean is really a shortened term for environmental impact. We want to be good stewards of our environment. And so what we did at the Heartland Institute is we took those three factors and we assessed each one of them independently, and then together we came up with an affordable, reliable, and clean scorecard.
So how do you score within each of those things? How does one get? Is it higher or lower? I think you want to have a lower score,
right?
Correct? So how do you get that lower score? Like what is the factors there?
Yeah. So what we did is we rated 0 to 10 for each component. So for example, affordability. Well, that's something that we can quantify. There are data available that shows us what the cost of each energy source is. So when we look at the full system levelized cost of electricity, that accounts for all of the factors involved. If you have an energy source that requires building out more transmission lines that are very expensive, that gets factored in. If you have an energy source that's not available full time and you need other sources to supplement them at a cost, that gets factored in. So for affordability, we took a look at, actually the best paper on this is a study published in the peer-reviewed journal Energy in 2022, Full System Levelized Cost of Energy. And what it found is that by the numbers, natural gas is easily the most affordable energy source. Second to natural gas is coal, which by the way is more than double the cost of natural gas. Coal is still very affordable compared to all the rest, but natural gas is that much more affordable. And then you had nuclear power, hydropower come in pretty much the same. And then surprisingly to many people, wind power, solar power, biomass are very, very much more expensive. So that's one, we can quantify that. Reliability. Reliability is also very simple. Is it available 24/7? Can we plan for tomorrow, for next week, for next month, for a year from now to have as much of that energy production as we want? Well, for natural gas, for coal, for nuclear power, the answer is yes. For hydro, pretty much. For biomass, yes. Wind and solar doesn't deliver that. So that was a second factor. The third factor, clean. That's more of it's not so much a quantifiable score, but still there are criteria that we can get to without much doubt. So what we looked at is, first of all, emissions. How much emissions does electricity production from each source entail? And for wind and solar, that's the one factor that they do very well in, as well as nuclear power and hydropower. Natural gas, by the way, doesn't produce much emissions at all, but still some. But also, it's more than just emissions. Some folks that want us to sell out everything for the climate crisis, as they put it, only want to look at emissions. But when I was a kid growing up, what environmentalism really was land impact. Can we preserve as much of America as possible? So the second score in the environmental factor was land impact, land conservation. And in that, wind power and solar power do quite poorly because the concentration of energy in a piece of coal and some natural gas is very powerful, whereas it's very diffuse. It's not very concentrated in the breeze, in sunlight. It requires a tremendous amount of land to harness just a modest amount of energy there. But there's also species impacts. Are there direct kills from these energy sources? And again, wind and solar do that. Wind turbines kill millions of birds and bats each and every year here in America. Many of those are threatened and endangered species. Another component we looked at was water and soil impacts. So, for example, if we have to mine a good deal of rare earth minerals to produce the components necessary for equipment, in this case, again, it's wind and solar, then it has a significant soil and water impact. So putting that all together, for myself and for the Heartland Institute, I mean, I don't care what the fuel source is for electricity production. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the end result an affordable, reliable, and clean product? And so in our scorecard, what it turns out is that natural gas is the gold standard. Second to that, actually grouped together are the next three, and those would be nuclear, hydro, and coal. They're pretty good as well. Not as good as natural gas, but pretty darn good. And the other three, biomass, wind, and solar, that's where you have your problems. So when people say, sometimes you hear the term, all of the above energy. Well, all of the above should have the opportunity to compete for electricity, power, production share. But we shouldn't be carving out a specific amount of energy production for sources that are not affordable, reliable, and clean. And that's basically what we wanted to do with our scorecard. And with that, you can see the objective numbers. And again, it's not necessarily something I expected when I set out to write the study, but natural gas wins far and away.
I mean, natural gas being on top, you know, the American populace as a greater number typically try to, you know, move towards wind and solar and wouldn't necessarily expect that natural gas would be the best out of all of that. How can you make the case for natural gas, like further than this? Obviously this if you look at the numbers, people could understand that, but how do you let people who believe that, you know, it should be flipped, right? The wind and solar should be on top. How do you make the case?
Well, different people have different subjective preferences. So for me, affordability is the most important. And there, like the data show, natural gas is by far the most affordable energy source. If we're paying our bills, it's important for me to have enough money left over after paying for my energy bill to have money for good nutrition, for housing, for healthcare, et cetera. But for those who prioritize the environment, and I think the environment's very important, we have to remember that all energy sources have their own unique environmental impacts. And it's not just emissions. Emissions is one component, and that's part of the scorecard that we put together. But there's so much more to environmental stewardship, especially conserving land. So for example, scientists at Harvard University, who by the way are looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions more than anything else, that's what they want to do. What they did is they said, okay, let's take a look at wind power. How many wind turbines do we need so that we could power our current electrical needs on the grid with wind power? And what they found is that you would have to cover literally 1/3 of America's land mass with wind turbines to replace conventional power generation. I mean, think about the environmental destruction. I mean, I say that, but really think about that. Mm-hmm. If we were to level half of our forests, if we were to cover a third of our forests, cover a third of our open plains, a third of our offshore viewscapes and beaches with wind turbines, that would be tremendous destruction of species, of habitats, and just viewscapes. And by the way, if we were to electrify transportation, which so many people want to do, now that number would be half. I mean, that's simply undoable. That would be an environmental apocalypse.
It's interesting, like you just mentioned, everyone has their own priorities, and even countries, if you think about it. You know, a country who might not be as well off as America might put obviously affordability first. Countries who have their things together but need to be able to power hospitals, they might be like, oh, we need that reliability to be able to ensure that we stay on the grid. So everyone has their own thing at the end of the day, but this is a very interesting thing, and I encourage people to go ahead and look at your white paper if they have any more questions. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Maggie. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.